going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. So today we have a slightly different type of video. Today we have 8 big superhero games that were cancelled that would definitely change the superhero gaming scene, as of course right now as to how many great superhero games there are, especially on current gen consoles, is very low. So let's dive into this list, and of course if there are any that I didn't mention that you feel were super important, by all let me know in the comment section below. Now diving into the first one, it is Daredevil, the Man Without Fear. Now the interesting fact about this one is that it was actually meant to be released on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, so if you go back how many years ago that was, of course it was definitely a long time ago. But there was a game studio called 5,000 Feet that basically decided to tackle, of course, Daredevil in an open world action game, and it all started as a linear type of brawler, but then Sony got involved and demanded that it expands to an open world game, and plus Sony wanted Daredevil to grind across the city to give you a better perspective, like a Tony Hawk style, and then of course that led to Marvel and Sony just constantly conflicting about the priorities of the game, and then essentially they just went into overrunning the budget, and of course they just completely finished the game alongside the company as well. Now the next one is the one that most of us know, and funny enough we were talking about it a couple of videos back, and it is the Avengers for your PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And in a nutshell, it basically got canned because there were a lot of kind of movie license cash grabs that were on their way out when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, and THQ were basically making this game, but simply because of all the bad things that were going on around the time and all the bad ones that were being created, this essentially kind of just got completely pulled out simply because of that. So they were essentially having a superhero beat 'em up that put you in charge of all the main Avengers, and then you all were in an all-out fight with the Skrulls. So it would have definitely been a very fun game, but because of what was happening at the time, again, it was essentially meant to be based on the 2012 Avengers movie, but because of all the other bad stuff, it kind of just fell into that cycle, even though it probably would have been a great game, but it then just got completely canned. Now the next one is a very important one, purely because as of this day I'm making this video, there is a game like this that does not exist, and this is a Superman game. Now this one in particular is called Superman Blue Steel. It was meant to be for your PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and what's really interesting is that they were going to also release it on the Wii, and I guess, you know, when a game releases on the Wii as well, I don't know, it kind of gets people talking, but unfortunately Warner's canned that proposed sequel, plus Factor 5 themselves imploded as a studio, and that was really it for the game. Now it is a shame because the word around at that time when the game was, you know, in the process of being made, was that the studio finally nailed Superman's flying mechanics, and a really cool fact that was leaked is that you even had the ability to grab enemies and smash them through buildings. Now again, graphically wise how this game looked, there was no visual leaks of it, but in terms of gameplay features that were leaked about this game, just the ability to be able to grab enemies and smash them through buildings, that's a deal for me. I would have definitely bought that 100%. That would have been a great game, because like I said, it still is a game that we are yet to receive, and I guess at this stage we never know if we will receive a Superman game. It's interesting though, because it's safe to say we are in a position, thanks to Spider-Man PS4, that a lot of companies are probably seeing the potential for superhero games. Now we have the Avengers game coming up as well, so after this game you just don't know what could essentially be in the pipeline. Now moving on to the next one, it is The Dark Knight, again PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 as well. Now Batman Begins received a game that was basically a possible, you know, rush to movie tie-in. It didn't review or sell all that great, but regardless, the game for the sequel, The Dark Knight, was going full steam ahead. Now, The developers behind this, which was Pandemic Games, were in charge, and there's a number of reasons accumulated to this one's cancellation, but most importantly the ill returns of a movie game tie-in at the present, state at that time. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is, as far as a Dark Knight game would have been great, definitely 100%, but we also are pretty, ambitious right now in terms of just seeing a Batman game in general as well. And over the next year or two, we know that WB Montreal had been teasing this and X, Y, and Z, so whether or not we will be getting some type of new Batman game in general, I don't know. I'm pretty positive on it than I am, doubting it, if that makes sense. So I guess we can only wait and see what will happen. Now, moving on, it's an interesting one, and again, it was actually going to be published on the Wii alongside your PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And it is just called The Flash. Now, the company behind this was called Brash Entertainment, and they were basically just making it an ambitious open world game, but sadly they just made some really bad business decisions that put the company down under in general, and then of course them going down under due to these crazy decisions that they were making, they just took the game with it. And since then, of course, we did have a fan-made Flash game, but as of today, we don't really have a Flash game out there in terms of like a big game that is, a multi-platform one. So again, what the future holds for a Flash game, it's probably looking bright. It probably will happen at some stage. It's just a matter of when. Now, moving on to the final 3 games, and I would say the next couple ones are really interesting. And the first one is SpiderMan Classic. It was going to be for your PlayStation 3 and an Xbox 360. The people behind a very underrated Spider-Man game, which of course is Web of Shadows, were called Shabbat Games. Now, the concept was basically to pair up Spider-Man with Wolverine and just simply send them through, some of the most classic villain smash-ups through comic history. But unfortunately, Web of Shadows, of course, did sell, an underwhelming amount, and it wasn't enough cash for the studio to stay afloat as a whole whilst they go ahead and develop this awesome game. And then that resulted in the studio closing back in 2009. But I think that would have been a really interesting one. Spider-Man and Wolverine just going straight through all the classic smash-ups. Again, whether it would have been an open world game or just purely, mission based, I don't really care, because the concept alone, it does sound really good. Now, next up is one of the most recent ones, if you will, which is Suicide Squad. Again, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. What's interesting is WB Montreal basically still managed to entice the higher-ups for a solo Suicide Squad based follow-up, which they began secretly developing. Now, apparently it was in the process for like 2 years, and the game after 2 years had to put a fork in it because the studio was put onto another Batman game instead, and the only things to leak was some teaser art and the fact that it was co-op, and that its first live showing to excess failed to impress. So what state the game was in when they went ahead and showcased it, of course, to all the executives, etc., I don't know, but apparently in a nutshell it was pretty bad, so they just completely decided to pack it in. Would a Suicide Squad done well? Personally, I would say it would have. Again, open world is what is a big genre in video games right now, and I think right now if you can make a superhero game that is an open world game, I reckon it's going to smash big numbers. Definitely, as long as you have fun gameplay features and the game graphically looks half decent, then you're pretty much on your way to millions. That's just my opinion, I would say, because right now, like I keep saying, there is hardly any of these around, so there's such a big market for it, just to go ahead and chuck some in there. Now, the last one was going to be an exclusive to Xbox 360, and it was called Marvel Chaos. Now, EA Chicago, they are underrated developers. They were most, known for the game Def Jam, Vendetta Fighter, and they were tasked with putting Marvel superheroes against each other, and the game had added the bonus of full-on destructible 3D environments, but it was meant to feel like snapshots from the comic book page. So graphically it was going to be super cartoony, but the studio was shut down after lackluster sales and reviews from the Vendetta sequel. So once the studio gets shut down, if no one else wants to buy the idea as well, it seems like you gotta take that with you. But guys, what were your thoughts on these games? Are these games that you would have really liked to see? To kind of run through all the ones we've talked about, so first of all we had Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, then we had The Avengers, Superman Blue Steel, The Dark Knight, The Flash, Spider-Man Classic, Suicide Squad, and lastly Marvel Chaos. So these are the 8, big games that I personally think would have done very well. But you guys get in the comment section below and let me know. That is going to wrap up this video here. As always, subscribe for more awesome content if you haven't already. And until the next one, have yourselves a ridiculously amazing day, and adios amigos.